everyone. You're listening to The Future of Food Is You, a production of the Cherry Bomb Podcast Network. I'm your host, Abena Anim-Somuah, and each week I talk to emerging talents in the food world, and they share what they're up to, as well as their dreams and predictions for what's ahead. I love this new generation of chefs, bakers, and creatives making their way in the world of food, drink, media, and tech. Today's guest is Lily Geiger, founder of Figlia, a non-alcoholic beverage company inspired by the Italian aperitivo hour. Lily says she started Figlia for those who are going zero proof, for whatever reason. Lily and I discussed the story behind Figlia and the deeply personal reason why she started the company. Please note, we discuss alcoholism later in the show. I just wanted to flag this for those of you dealing with addiction or other similar issues. Stay tuned for our conversation. If you're an aspiring magazine collector, you need to check out Cherry Bomb. Each issue is thick and lush and celebrates women and culinary creatives via gorgeous photography and great stories and recipes. Whether you collect magazines, read them and pass them along to your friends, or cut them up for your vision boards or collages, you'll love Cherry Bomb. You can find Cherry Bomb wherever indie magazines are sold. Places like the Wildset Hotel in St. Michael's, Maryland, Archistratus Books and Foods in Brooklyn, and Mulberry Iconic Magazines in New York City. Or visit cherrybomb.com to order an issue today. Now let's check in with today's guest. Lily, thank you so much for joining us on the Future Food Is You podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Can you tell us where you grew up and how did food show up in your life?
Yeah, so I grew up actually here in New York City on the Upper West Side, close to Columbia University. So in the hundreds, and I love the area so much. I feel like it's still one of the last authentic areas of the city that hasn't been totally gentrified, some because of Columbia, but still really authentic. And so, yeah, I grew up cooking a lot. I was an only child of two single parents, so I feel like often you find yourself experimenting with food and finding yourself making dinner for yourself for lunches. I also went to a Waldorf school, which meant that when we were in kindergarten, we would actually start chopping all the vegetables. When we got to school, anything that we'd be preparing, it was often a soup, and then we would enjoy the soup together come like lunchtime, which I thought was so awesome as a kid to get to do that and to be trusted with a dull knife.
Before we talk about Figlia, I want to start off by talking about your relationship with alcohol. It's a big part of the work that you do, and it's a huge mission.
Yeah, I don't drink much at all. The only thing that I do still drink from time to time is wine. And I would just call myself a super intuitive drinker. So I only really drink when I'm like craving the taste. So that could be usually with a meal. Or if someone is like, you have to try this. This is so special, blah, blah, blah. I usually don't drink. It doesn't make me feel great. So
what do you believe to be society's relationship to alcohol based on your perspective?
I mean, it's complicated. I think that over time, we are starting to see people become more aware of their alcohol intake. So I think that people are a little bit more mindful about their drinking now. That varies based on where you're based and the things that you're around and the things that you're seeing. But I think that generally everyone is a lot more conscious of that from just a health standpoint. Historically, I think that binge drinking, especially like when I was in college, just was the craziest thing I'd ever experienced in what was around me.
Yeah, so I do think people are much more conscious of their intentionality around alcohol. I think just across the board, even college too.
Food, yeah, I mean, with everything, I think people are just like, what is healthy for me and what's just totally not? For me, the first thing that I've tried to just take out of my day-to-day.
What was your motivation for starting Figlia?
So I grew up with an alcoholic parent. My dad was on and off of sobriety my whole life, so would, go to rehab, relapse, be in inpatient and outpatient programs. So I think that just really changed the way that I saw drinking from the jump. I think I was really afraid of it at first. And then seeing everyone during COVID just drinking at an all-time high, I was just blown away by how much everyone around me was drinking. And so I found that to be the right time to start Figlia. But I would say most of all, it's just my experience in growing up with a parent who struggled.
And I know when we first talked, you mentioned that you did lose your dad to the disease, and I'm terribly sorry for that. So
Thank you.
It seems like you're honoring his legacy in a very intentional way.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. How did you decide on the name Figlia?
Figlia means daughter in Italian, and I wanted to honor at least my time when my father passed. I moved to Italy for about 5 months and lived there alone. I barely made any friends. I was just trying to process what had happened, and I think I was so just enamored by the way that people did everything in moderation. Nothing was as overdone as it was here in the States. That really changed the way I thought about things, and I really brought that back with me. I always wanted to honor that as well.
That's so beautiful. Where in Italy were you?
Rome.
Oh,
Not a bad place
it's
to
everything.
be. Yeah,
Everything's in Rome.
it is.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
I know something you mentioned is that, Figlia was inspired by the Italian aperitivo hour, just like having a good time, drinking, just being an accompanying to life's events. When you were thinking about the flavor profile for Figlia, how did you come about developing it?
I wanted to make sure that it tasted sophisticated, but didn't actually trigger the taste of alcohol. So you'll find that a lot of non-alcoholic spirits and a lot of non-alcoholic beers ultimately still taste like the real thing. And so I think that can be super triggering to someone in recovery. So always wanted to be aware of that in developing it. So I think looking into a lot of botanical extracts, juices, trying to also not add in any preservatives was important, wanting it to also feel like it wasn't loaded with sugar. Yeah, I worked with someone in Los Angeles, which was a really hard thing to do during COVID. It was mostly them just mailing me samples and me giving my feedback, and it ended up being great. And it is our only flavor. We just have 2 products. So we have our aperitivo and our can.
Nice. So for our listeners who haven't had a chance to try the products, can you describe the flavor in your best way possible?
I can. So our bottle is our aperitivo. So it's similar to like a Campari or an Aperol, but it has no alcohol, no added sugars, no preservatives. And then what we did was we wanted the first flavor to feel almost like rounded like an Amaro still. So the leading flavors are rose, bitter orange, and clove. And the clove is kind of an unexpected ingredient. It's often used as a baking spice, but actually it was the last tip that I got from a dear friend of mine who is a chef. And he was like, I think that this is going to make it. And it did. Our next SKU is our frizzante. So it's essentially just a pre-mixed spritz. It's a perfect ratio of what's in our bottle, sparkling water and lemon. And it's also Fiore, so same flavor.
Nice. Amazing. Yeah. I do love the Fiore Frizzante. You still
really
kept with the Italian theme. How do you think about those drinks as they differ in terms of their experience?
They're totally different, I guess, in just the setting in which you'd probably drink them. So I always say Fiore is great behind a bar. So often they'll be in our restaurants or bars. I think that they're great for sharing. So, you bring a bottle to a party and whoever does drink can mix it with booze if they want. And whoever doesn't has an option that feels safe to them that they can have with sparkling water or on its own, etc.
Normally, if something's behind the bar, it normally ends up in the bar cart. So what's your favorite way to take the Fiore concentrate?
A decent pour of Fiore over a ton of ice or a big ice cube with sparkling water and either orange or lemon or lime. I love the frizzante also over ice or just serve chilled in a can. It's always good. And frizzante is easy to just take with you or just to hand out at a party to just not even worry about mixing a drink.
Love that. Crack a cold one. Yeah. In the park.
Exactly.
That's the best. When you were initially getting Figlia out into the world, what was the initial reception from your friends or acquaintances?
I think everyone was at first like, what? No one is going to buy that. But I think everyone really believes in the reason why I'm doing it and knows my story. Then I think they started to see just this trend and this uptick in how many people were looking for this type of product. Even on our launch day, like I'm no one famous and no influencer or anything. And we had a pretty big launch day online. And
amazing.
I thought it was just going to be my mom and some friends and friends of those who I work with. But it was, so everyone really loved it.
So I'm always fascinated by brands and the mood boards, the pictures, the stories that make up, the final product. And your Instagram is full of these beautiful photos, icons, reference pieces. How do you find images that you think represent Figlia?
We like to have fun with it. When we first launched, we had a lot of photos from Studio 54, and I think that got people really excited, and we put this whole disco playlist out, and we just wanted it to be fun and to feel like it was just this fun option for either bringing to a party or just having that break between work and clocking out of work. Now we like to mix in a lot of different things. So what we've been doing recently is actually having those who have struggled with alcohol or have a loved one who has tell their story and use our platform for that, which is different than I think what anyone else is doing. And I really think that shows through who we are. Other than that, we love Pinterest photos and product shots and also just reposting photos of people that have posted Figlia and wanting to share what they, make with it and how they enjoy it.
Yeah, I really love those. I know Hello Adrian, I think that's her handle. She had a beautiful story too about her dad and the relationship he had to alcohol. And I was reading through some of them and it's really interesting. I think, society has this really intense relationship with alcoholism and what it means and it affects so many people. Mm-hmm. So I think to almost shed a light on the reality of it, the difficulty in being sober, the tension, it's really beautiful to have that space for your brand. So I hope to see more of those stories.
Yes.
And speaking of that, how do you think Figlia has played a role in being a vessel for those who want to be sober or those who are sober curious?
Us retelling those stories was our first biggest step in that direction. We work pretty closely with Partnership to End Addiction, so across these 3 years that we've been in business, we've posted resources that people can use. We've posted just links that if they ever want to speak to Partnership to End Addiction, or if there's anything that we can help them with and to get that help, and that, I don't know, just to find a resource is always helpful in that situation when you feel like you just don't know where to go and what to do.
Yeah.
And we want to be that for them. On top of that, just retelling people's stories, having open conversations, whether that be, a panel or an event that we host. We're super open in trying to break down that stigma.
I've had friends who've, decided to come sober, or I've had parents who struggle with alcoholism, and seeing the world of resources that make it so much easier to find something to help replace it's just incredible to see. So
yeah, I love that because I never had that. And so I think that's why I started this, is really it. It comes before the beverage itself, right? Because I didn't come from food and beverage. I came from just, I was kind of early. I mean, I was like 24 when I started this.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Like straight out of school a little bit.
Straight out of school, trying to figure everything out. And
yeah,
so,
definitely. Well, since you've been a founder in the non-alc space for 3 years, I would love to get your description of the non-alcoholic beverage landscape. Where do you think it sits right now, and what are any interesting insights you've learned so far?
Yeah. I am so amazed by some of the founders and products and the innovation behind it. I'm super interested in just the non-alcoholic wine space. I think that there are so many cool brands that aren't necessarily identifying as non-alcoholic wines, but are still a great alternative, like Unified Ferments in Brooklyn, Muri in Copenhagen. And I'm always trying new products just because I'm just fascinated by it all. I think that there are some that I don't personally enjoy, but I think that they still are awesome and people love them. And I'm impressed of just how many different ways people could come up with products like this and the variety that we're now offering those who don't drink for whatever reason. I'm applauding everyone in this space because it's hard.
To each their
to
own.
master.
Some you like, some you don't.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are tons of difficulties and realities of being a founder, but I would say one of the biggest ones is raising capital, and especially raising capital to bring this dream to life. What was your process for fundraising for the company?
It's hard. I mean, it's a really hard time to fundraise in general, and I think anyone who's fundraising right now knows that. But I will say we've taken a different approach in the sense that we haven't raised a ton of money. We also have raised in small increments just to see how much we actually need. And I bootstrapped the business up until last June.
Wow.
So that was obviously made me so aware of every single expense. Just being super cautious and honestly just prioritizing profitability, which I don't think is that common in the beverage space because it's hard to do. But we've been making our way. So still fundraising now. It's happening and still raise some money, but it's always just kind of a pain.
Yeah, well, best of luck. If there's any, angel investors or eager VCs, well, we have a non-alc brand for you.
Yeah, please hit me up.
It's so impressive that, in 3 years, Figlia is in 500 stores nationwide, from, your specialty grocery shop to your bodega to your beverage shop. What is your strategy when it comes to putting Figlia out into the world?
Now we might even also actually be closer to 600, which is since we last spoke. We've been growing.
Yeah,
so that's a mix of stores and restaurants. We have a pretty good split. I would say, since we don't have alcohol in our products, we could be in a coffee shop, we could be in a boutique. There are very little boundaries around that, which is awesome. But I would say trying to get into bigger retailers has been a shift for us just because it's a much different climate than like a Spirited Away or a Soft Spirits in Silver Lake. The new bar, that's low-hanging fruit, right? They know the product. They're going to champion and sell the product like it should be.
Yeah, they want
sold.
as much range and diversity as possible.
And they're our heroes. They're really vouching for these products. It's been a little trickier with the bigger retailers just wanting to have more control over the way they talk about it and the way they sell it. And so I think demoing is going to ultimately be the best thing because this type of space takes so much education still. A lot of people don't know what it is and they need to taste it and they need to know more about it. So,
yeah, that's awesome. And then for your restaurant approach, because obviously I feel like sometimes you try a product behind the bar and you're like, ooh, I really love it. I'm interested in cocktails. I'll bring it home. How do you work with restaurants to sort of make sure that they're representing Figlia properly?
So for our New York restaurants and a lot of California, because I go out there a lot, I will go myself and meet them. I really like to meet either the som or the bar manager, restaurant owner, anyone that wants to talk. I've had some of my best experiences doing that because I think ultimately if we can sit down and talk about it, they're more likely to want to include it. I always tell them to let their bar team experiment with the product because everyone serves it differently. I'll recommend the way that I like to serve it, but again, I just really like them to kind of make it their own.
Well, since we're huge manifestors on the podcast and Figlia is continuing to grow, is there one dream stockist and one dream restaurant you'd love to see your product in?
Sometimes I just want Figlia in the places that I shop at and that I go to. And so they might not be like the biggest store, but East Village Organic is
cute.
my Air One. And I just want it there so badly.
Yeah.
And Superiority Burger.
Nice.
Because I'm in the East Village and I go there all the time. And my boyfriend and I love to just sit at the bar. And I would just love to order a Figlia there.
Yeah. How has community helped you in growing this business?
I mean, the thing about community, especially with those that are super loyal to Figlia, is they're going to go out and do a lot of the work for you. Like, they will go to their local store and be like, why don't you carry Figlia? Or like my mom does it all the time. She'll pressure everyone
Shout
in
out to
her
moms.
local neighborhood to sell Figlia. I think that that's been huge, and just having a small but very loyal community. We have a lot of people on subscription that just drink it every week. I think much bigger than that, our community is also those who can just relate to my story and then in turn feel comfortable sharing theirs. So I'm really grateful for our community also for that reason.
Yeah. And speaking of like your customer community, what are some of the things or how has been the reception been when people have tried the product and sung your praises?
It's awesome. I'm, like I said, amazed that so many people liked it just because it was a new category to get into. It's still pretty new. I think that for those who don't maybe particularly enjoy Fiore, I still want to come out with something else, another flavor that they will like, so that there is a product for everyone and an option for everyone. So that's always something I always say when they're like, I don't know if I like this. I'm like, we're going to come out with something that you do like then, because I want there to be something for everyone.
With time.
Yes.
I know when we caught a while back, you were mentioning a bit more about your new strategy and how you wanted products. And something you said that I remember I think we might have had a bit of a back and forth on was talking about wanting your products to be in the alcoholic aisle in some places. What was the thought process behind that decision?
Yeah, so that came about when we signed on with a larger retailer that we're about to launch in. It was a great point. I think when you mentioned it, I hadn't spoken to anyone else about it outside of my team, but it's something that we battled with because we don't want it to seem juvenile in the juice mixer section. We want it to feel like it's sophisticated and that it's taken seriously, but we also don't want to trigger them. So when we originally had mentioned to this retailer, we want to be closer to the booze, that is something that we were worried about. My hope is that we actually can just carve out our own shelf space. And I see that actually closer to the specialty sections, like near the cheese and then like a charcuterie area.
Nice.
Just so that it feels elevated, it feels sophisticated, but it's not necessarily falls into either category or shelf space.
I know sustainability is something that is really passionate to you, and it's a core value to Figlia, both in your packaging and your product. Can you tell us about how you think about sustainability for the brand on both sides?
In a bunch of different ways. I mean, I think it's just generally a really bad look if you're not prioritizing that as a brand. Yeah. I think as a small brand, sometimes it's often more expensive to be more sustainable. And so we wanted to make sure that that was something that we actually put money into. So for instance, like if you received an order online from Figlia, we just have one sheet of paper. We don't have like stickers and all these extra things. We literally just have one sheet of paper and it has a QR code and it's like, join us online and we'll talk online.
Amazing.
But we don't need to throw like a million marketing collateral pieces into this box. And so that still is something that we've done. We've tried to eliminate, the amount of like even extra dyes that we use. We want people to like reuse the bottle and give it another life. Also, we give proceeds directly to Harlem Grown through 1% for the Planet. And I volunteer with them all the time. And that's been probably one of the most amazing things that's come out of Figlia, other than just getting to share my story and hear people share theirs. That community up there, and Tony, who started Harlem Grown, is the most amazing person and has the biggest heart. And hearing his story and why he started it also aligns with Figlia. So I'm so grateful that that's a part of our ethos as well.
You also donate a portion of your proceeds to Partnerships and Addiction, which provides guidance and care to persons battling substance abuse and their families as well. Obviously, considering the mission of Figlia and the legacy that you're honoring your father with, what was the process in deciding on this partnership?
I wanted an organization that was well known, one that maybe people already could identify with, also one that was national. Ended up meeting them. It was during COVID, so it was really hard to get in touch with a lot of people because you kind of can't just go meet in person for coffee or anything. They were so sweet. They were so passionate about what they did, and I was just very eager to work with them. I was like, you guys are awesome, and I want to work with you. Since we've been able to get a ton of resources from them, anything that they want to echo, we also will echo, whether it's on Instagram or TikTok or, whatever, even though I'm so not a TikToker and I'm trying. I always want to echo it.
Are there any other organizations or communities that you'd love to partner with in the future?
It's hard because I think that some of them that I think, oh, this would make sense or I would love to help in any way I can would be like AA and Al-Anon. But I just don't want to ever come off as insensitive or do it the wrong way or breach any of that anonymity because I know how important that is to that community. And I know how helpful that was for my dad going through it. So I'm still trying to figure out how I would do that. It's always top of mind. I mean, I think that with something like this, the best thing you can do is to just form community around you and to feel like you're not alone. We're always thinking about that. It's just a matter of the right time, right approach.
I wonder if there's any events or things you kind of see yourself at. Again, we're not in I hate to say showboaty way, but just being hey, just if you needed something or this is someone.
Totally. I just don't want it to seem like this is some big marketing pitch and it's not, right? It's this is so dear to my heart. I would never want to upset anyone in that community. And it's just a matter of how to do it.
I really respect that. And it seems like you've really thought intentionally about that. I know there's going to be a world of Figlia, and obviously you mentioned when people say they don't like the product, there's a possibility that something else can come up. Are there any products that you would love to make for Figlia as you think down the line?
I don't want to go too far with just a million SKUs and a million flavors. I want it to be a limited amount of product that are all premium and that people just know they can trust and that have good ingredients and great flavor. I want to, of course, launch other flavors. We're working on one now. I can't tell you what it is, but
we're waiting.
It's going to be great.
Our cups are ready.
Yeah.
We've got our sparkling water.
Yes,
nice. That's amazing.
Right. Yeah.
Are there other things other than beverages that you think you'd want to have a Figlia? Are you into merch? Is there a fun book?
We have merch. We have merch. We have a crew neck that is super soft, and we have a tote bag, and we call it the clink-proof tote because you can put 2 bottles in there and they won't hit each other. So always recommend that. Yeah. Otherwise...
important technology.
Yeah. I mean, I always want us to be a drink brand. So I don't know if we're ever going to come out with anything that isn't a drink outside of merch.
What do you think the future of non-alcoholic beverages will be?
I see it becoming a lot more popular even than it is now. I think that we're here to stay. I only see more innovation and more amazing options coming out of the woodworks from really incredible and innovative founders. And I'm super impressed by what everyone's already doing. So, sky's the limit.
Is there a celebrity or someone you love that you would love to hand a can of Figlia to or crack a cold open one with?
Yes, it's Amy Schumer. I love her.
Nice.
And
another Upper West Side
she's
girly.
She was living on the Upper West Side, but she talks a lot about her dad battling with drinking. I love that she has a sense of humor about it because that's really the only way I've been able to get through it. So Amy, if you're out there, I love you.
Amy, we have some drinks for you.
And we have some drinks for you.
That's amazing. And what do you think the future of society's approach to sobriety and dealing with alcoholism will be?
Hopefully more honest and open. I think the more that we talk about it, even though it spooks people because it's so not the norm, I think a lot of people are like, oh, okay, so I'm not alone. I see us continuing to break down the stigma. I would love to be a leader in at least this category in doing that. And I would love for other brands to join me in that and let's talk about this. So yeah, I only see it becoming more and more talked about.
Lily, thank you so much for joining us. And so excited to continue watching your journey and watching Figlia grow. If we wanted to continue to support you, where are the best places to find you?
So you can find us at drinkfiglia.com. We're also on Instagram at drinkfiglia and TikTok, but don't go there first. And we're also in a ton of stores nationwide. So if you go on our site and you plug in your zip code, you can see what's nearest to you and restaurants.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been perfect.
Before we go, our guest is going to leave a voicemail just talking to themselves 10 years from now. You have reached the Future of Food Is You mailbox. Please leave your message after the beep.
Hey, Lily. It's Lily. I bet that by the time you hear this, Figlia looks a lot different. I hope it's still around and that you're working with a lot of the same people and that you're surrounded by the same friends and family that you have right now in this moment and have picked up some new ones along the way. I hope that you're at peace, maybe you're still living in New York because it seems like you really can't leave New York. I hope that Figlia has become an impactful brand that has resonated with a lot of people and hopefully helped them tell their story too. I'm proud of you.
That's it for today's show. I would love for you to leave a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to our show. The Future of Food is You is a production of the Cherry Bomb Podcast Network. Thanks to the team at CityVox Studios, executive producers Kerry Diamond and Catherine Baker, associate producers Jenna, Sadhu, and Elizabeth Vogt, and content operations manager Londyn Crenshaw. Catch you on the Future Flip.